Hello everyone, so we just had an over-the-air patch change and it brought about some pretty significant changes into the game. We had a nerf to the newly buffed up leech, bringing him back to a 5 cost, thankfully. We had a nerf to sentry, bringing him down from 10 power to 8, and his void being a negative 10 power to a negative 8 power as well. And then we had a few other changes, a nerf to the Spectrum deck that was popularized recently, and a change to Werewolf. Ever since I've come back, Werewolf at 4 cost has just felt like he was not very viable. Having to drop him last turn, you never really had enough time to get enough going for him to feel like it was worth the effort that you put into building a deck around him. But with him being dropped back down to a 3 cost card, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to be built in a pretty efficient way, especially with Leech exiting the meta. So initially, I feel like there are probably 2 ways that you can build him, either into a mill and then like a darkhawk style, similar to a video I posted about 6 months ago whenever Werewolf was released. I think that deck, or a shell or a similar shell to that deck, does really well still. But I also like the idea of a disrupt style build, something that's sending them a lot of rocks, a lot of junk, disrupting them with like a Black Widow so that they can't draw into their key resources. And then you have the last turn play of the Hawk, which is not going to be an on reveal, so you could drop that big power and then have your Werewolf positioned wherever else you need it to be. And then, of course, we do have the counterplay with the Shang-Chi. I think that with Leech leaving the meta, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more greed into the game with a lot of high power cards. I think Shang-Chi may start kind of finding his way back into a few builds. And I think he works perfectly with Werewolf because you can swing a location with Shang-Chi that gets a bounce on Werewolf, and then you can swing another lane by bouncing Werewolf into whichever lane you need it to be. We're going to go ahead and jump over into a couple of games. I think Werewolf is in a pretty good spot. You want to watch out for things like Red Guardian if you don't have priority after that turn 3 play. But overall, I think he's in a much better spot at 3 cost. It gives you more time to really develop him into that just massive monster that you want to see. So we're going to go ahead and jump over into a couple of games. Thank you guys as always for being here. I hope you guys enjoy. Ooh, I like the White Widow into Death's Domain quite a bit. It's a free way to get -4 on their side. Let's go ahead and go White Widow. Let's go Hood. And instead of... we're going to go Black Widow instead of Rockslide. That way we can guarantee they don't draw into anything additional going to that next turn. And unfortunately, we didn't see Werewolf. That's perfectly fine. I think we're in a really good spot here. I don't think they're going to be able to compete for Death's Domain. I would snap, but I don't feel like we absolutely have to. I kind of want to see the game play out if we can help it. They have extra energy going into this last turn, but they only have 3 cards, or they have Kitty Pryde plus 2 other cards and then the Widow's Bite. So they'll have 4 in hand, but it's not huge by any means. The Bishop over here is pretty big, pretty formidable, but I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome the Hawk that we have. And so let's throw... I'm going to throw Hawk plus Demon into the left lane. And then they have to fight for all 3 locations. I think we probably get a retreat here unless they have some kind of hard counter or way to put power into Death's Domain or something to compete easily for 2 of those locations, but I just don't think they're going to be able to. Ooh, and so we do get the stay here. Maybe we should have put some power into mid. So they did the Widow's Kiss and... they did Valkyrie onto the Widow's Kiss, thinking it would set it. Oh no, that's unfortunate. They even did the they even did the emote that they were so smart. Oh, so Valkyrie set Widow's Kiss base power to 3. The ongoing ability is -4, so it still comes out as a -1. It was a good thought. It just was slightly misplayed. We will take 2 where we can. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have King. The first location being Kiln, so we can position some cards there a little bit earlier. I'm going to do Korg just to get a feel for, 1, we send them a little bit of junk. 2, we get an idea of if they're running like a lower curve deck where they might use a card into Kiln where we could trigger our rocket bonus, because that's where the majority of his power comes from. He's not so much a turn 1 drop in most situations. A lot of times he ends up wanting, you want to drop him when you can almost guarantee where the opponent's going to play their cards. Let's go ahead and play Falcon. We could play Raccoon a turn early, it would be... It wouldn't be necessarily energy efficient, but we wouldn't know if it would hit. We wouldn't know if we could pull it back in and then get it back down on 4 efficiently. And I like the idea of getting an extra early disrupt with the korg. So we have a 0-1 ninja now. We have a 3-cost hawk. We have a 3-cost Shang-Chi. Korg, unfortunately, did get a little bit of hit, but I think that's fine for us. Let's go with Nico, and then we're going to go Korg in the left lane. With a Loki deck, what could they have hit that would be that beneficial? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they could have hit that would be impactful enough for them to snap into. On turn 4, we do have the ability to do Hawk into the left lane if we need just a little bit more push. And then we can always protect one of our locations with the Shang-Chi. We have the free ninja at any point in time. I guess they could re-trigger the peak, so maybe we needed to play Hawk out this turn. They could re-trigger it with their... so it is a werewolf deck. They could have re-triggered it with their Snow Guard cards. But with Werewolf, he's going to be bouncing out of this kiln location. I think a lot of times he could get bigger than what they would necessarily want to see, where Shang-Chi could be a pretty impactful target for him. I'm going to play Hawk into the left lane. Let's go ahead and play our Hood. We have the free ninja that I'm just going to kind of hold on to. It's easy to forget a 0-cost 1-power ninja. Probably don't even need him, but there's a chance we might. And so let's see where they end up positioning their cards. They snapped because they had the 1-cost werewolf, which is nice, but it's hard to scale him that much that early. So we have Hawk that is sitting at a massive 19 power because we've hit Korg a couple of times. Rockslide is still somewhere in our deck if we need a little bit more surge. And speaking of Rockslide, there he is. Let's go ahead and play Rockslide. Let's play... I'm going to play Rockslide into mid. We're going to do Demon over to the right. And I almost think we hold Rocket, but I'm going to play Rocket into mid. 2 of the cards that we draw, we could play alongside like a Shang-Chi plus a Rocket next turn. But if it's Beast, we don't want to play it anyways. Black Widow would really be the only thing that we might get value from. And so let's continue letting them beef up their werewolf if we can have initiative going into this last turn. So the Falcon's going to pull those 1-cost cards back in. Werewolf is going to jump over into mid. He's going to be a very easy Shang-Chi target before he starts jumping around. And since they snapped, I really want to snap back, but we're just going to let this one play out. The werewolf got a little bit too big, a little bit too quickly, especially with the kiln limitation and locking down that location. We're gonna slow play it for 4 cubes versus potentially causing them to retreat for 2. And they do drop 3 cards. We have the Shang-Chi, which is not very common anymore, so it's easy to accidentally stay when maybe you should have retreated. Let's see what all they have on their end. They have Snow Guard, the bear, which does reverse the peak play, but since it's the last turn, it's not going to matter. We grab the win in kiln, we grab the win in the middle location and lose the peak just ever so slightly, allowing us to grab 4 cubes. We are still working on our upward climb. That brings us to, I think, like 163. We will take the 4. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Gamer, and the first location is Xandar. We have our Korg into a Rockslide, into a Black Widow, into a Beast, maybe a Werewolf and a Beast, to really start elevating and scaling. We add maximum disrupt onto the opponent's side of the board or in their deck, and then we have a lot of power to push outside of that as well. So we do have Nico. I don't think it's one we're going to use just yet. I'm going to go ahead and play White Widow into the left location. They snapped off of seeing a Mindscape, which is interesting. This last location, it is still featured right now for a few more minutes. It could be the Superflow, and they went ahead and played a card over there. So Forge into like a Brood could be something that they're looking at going with. And we do have our Werewolf now, so we could do... We could do Nico and then like a Beast, and it would destroy the Beast. It would draw us into additional cards. And I kind of like that idea. But at the same time, I don't really want to have too many resources on hand. And so maybe that's not the line we go with. Maybe we just sit with something like a werewolf this turn. And then we can start scaling him from there. If we use Beast, we're going to want to use Beast on this upcoming turn so that we have a chance to play those cards once again. And so Nico is actually going to change the next card we play into a demon. So it could be something like this. Werewolf would bounce once, would bounce twice. Next turn, we have a 1 cost. These are free. And then we have the 3 cost. So we're only sitting at 4 depending on what we draw into on the next turn. And so I think with Mindscape coming down, I think that's a pretty good shot for us. Monster Metropolis in the right lane could be a good ideal location for Werewolf to end up by the end of the game. But we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. The hood comes down. It is going to change into a demon itself. And then Beast is going to pull everything back in. We have some really deep discounts on our cards. We can move Werewolf a handful of times here as well, and look to try to maybe push to compete in this location. Shang-Chi. We want to go ahead and play our Shang-Chi to make sure that we're not going to be disrupted. I'm going to do a Korg into a White Widow, into Shang-Chi in the left lane. That would leave 1 space open here, and then we can do a demon. Or we could do the Black Widow, but that would make us not draw a card next turn, which I don't know that we like. I don't like leaving them with a demon, though. I think I'd rather not draw a card next turn. We give them a Shang-Chi, and that's all that we throw their way. Werewolf, Shadow King comes down, offsets the Werewolf, which is okay. Because we're going to scale up. It puts it below that Shang-Chi range, at least for now, which is fantastic. It's exactly what we want to see. Werewolf coming down into the right lane. Black Widow will move him back over to the left. And then our demon in the right lane, I think, becomes 9. So everything is below that Shang-Chi limit. And so it depends on what they end up sending us with the 3 cards. Wow. So the last card we played was Black Widow. We could jump with Absorbing Man. Or we could just go... Nah, this doesn't do it. So this would be 10 power in this lane. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it would put us above that limit here if we did Absorbing Man into Mindscape. But 4, 5, 6, 7, it only leaves us with 7 in the left lane. They could potentially pull back 3 by just playing any card there. So I almost want to just Onslaught into the left lane, assuming that they don't have another way to trigger Killmonger. I think this is the play. Like, we could try to overshoot the Mindscape, but a Shang-Chi plus something in the left lane would just absolutely derail us. So I'm going to lock in just the Onslaught in the left. See if we can take the 4 here. And we do get the retreat from the opponent. We will gladly take the 2 where we can, with the Mindscape making it a little bit more awkward to play than normal. But even with Werewolf getting offset by Shadow King, we were still able to scale him enough that he was impactful, and it was tough to make that last turn, last game play decision. So we will take the 2. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have the Snapping. The first location is Los Diablo Space. We have Nico in hand. We have Korg to add just a bit of disruption onto their side of the board. We have Beast to pull the Korg back in. We get another free drop of it. Depending on what this last or the second location is, the peak again is so interesting. That allows our Hawk to be 3. We can use Nico, but I like the idea of doing a White Widow. Next turn, we may do Beast to pull it back in. We can do more disruption with Korg, more disruption with White Widow, and it just becomes so difficult to manage. And so we are going to go with the White Widow. Next turn would be our Beast bounce. They go Jubilee, which was inverted, to a 1 cost, 4 power, and then into Cannonball is so unfortunate, causing our cards to not be stacked where Beast can pick them up. So we would have to decide between a little bit of disruption or picking up Korg. And you know what? This isn't the most effective play, but I kind of like the idea of doing Nico into a turn 4 Hawk, which we would get a copy of, and we could do another one after the fact. It's not perfect, but I like it. It's going to keep Nebula from scaling this turn. We're not going to be able to do the fun like bounce of White Widow into throwing it back down or the Korg. But when you have a big Hawk that you're threatening the opponent with, it's hard to outplay that, especially with the lack of Shang-Chi, the lack of Enchantress, those sorts of cards. Let's go ahead and play Hawk into the middle location. That way, if we decide to Beast Bounce Korg back in, because that's going to buff up 2 different Hawks for us, then we have that option. If we threw it into the left lane, we wouldn't necessarily want to pull it back into the hand. We don't get any benefit from that. And so we want to play it by ear like this, and that leaves the Korg bounce play open. I kind of like this idea. We have Werewolf, but we got him on turn 5, which is so late to really start enabling him. But with Black Widow, we're going to be able to make sure that they don't draw another card, so they stay at 13. We'll be able to play the Korg for free, bring both Hawks back up to 15. In addition to that, we could drop maybe the Werewolf. He bounces 1 time. Ooh, the Namora. So they are going to completely lock in this left location. They have a pretty big Nebula. Let's see what we end up drawing. The Hood is not what you would want to see. Let's go. Do they have a counter to this middle one? Is the biggest question mark for me. Because otherwise we could do something like 15, 16, 17. So we do need more there. So we could do Werewolf into a Korg, which pulls it over. But if they had more than 5, 8 power, we would lose this one potentially. I guess 10 power with the Korg push. So I'm gonna opt to not bounce the Werewolf. It feels like we need him in mid. It feels like we need that extra little bit of power there for some reason. And so, no, we didn't need it, but it is very, very close. So we have the Korg coming down. We used all of our energy, so they don't get any additional. We win the left by 1, we win mid by 2, and they can have the massive 12 power Nebula in the right location. We'll take the 4 cubes. That brings us back up even a little bit further down to 158. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Dara, and every time we play Dara, it's always interesting. He is probably running the really good cards like White Widow. I see from him pretty often. So we don't have a way to get a card here initially. I think that's okay. Next turn we could do Black Widow. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and start the Snowball early. I'm going to play Falcon even though it doesn't pull anything in. The Jins that we get from Nor Dimension will help us really start elevating our Werewolf, and then maybe we can Beast Bounce a handful of them back in so that they're not an issue. It looks like Dara is running the ongoing deck, which is interesting since it just got nerfed a little bit, but I still think it's very, very potent. It's just, I think most people kind of toss it to the side pretty quickly after a nerf. Let's play Werewolf, and then we're going to play the Jin into Kunlun. That's going to help him scale very, very quickly. We could always lock him away into the vault on the last turn of the game, or on turn 5 into turn 6, depending on what it looks like. So they have the goodest of boys Cosmo, and so the on reveals over there won't trigger, but we still should be able to get our Werewolf to jump over to that side of the board. And so the Jin comes down, their Jin comes down as well. They're going to be able to get a lot of just value out onto the board, and we are hoping that we can do exactly that. Drawing into a beast would be beautiful, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen here. Let's go Black Widow. I'm going to go ahead and do the Jin to the left. I don't necessarily care if he comes down or not. Or let's do Black Widow, let's do Rockslide, and then Jin. If he pulls over into the left location, that's fantastic. But we'll see from there. And then this is going to add a decent amount of disrupt to their build. And so if they're still looking for certain draws, this will make it a little bit harder for them to hit those. And so Werewolf scaling atrociously here. Coming in, he's already at 9 power, 11 power, jumping over into the Cosmode lane, and he is now at 13, which is huge. Man-Thing comes down, Jeff comes down as well. So interesting take on the ongoing Spectrum style build. And then we do from Nico get the Destroy component, which is a beautiful thing to see. Or is it really? Do we need it? I don't know that we need it. I kind of like the idea of doing Hawk into the left lane. We have the Jin to lean into to pull our Werewolf into one of these other two. Or Shang-Chi, or whatever we end up drawing. And so I kind of think we just do this with the Hawk in the left lane, really secure that one, and then we can move our cards out after the fact. Unless for some reason they lock down Kunlun, which I don't think they're going to. US Agent, and then they do play the Widow's Bite in the left lane. The Jin comes down in the right lane, the double Jin. So they're going to have a double big drop in this lane. Once we draw a card with a Spectrum bonus, 2, 4, 6 extra power here, right? So it brings them to 16. I guess it comes down to if they were able to draw it or not. I think we lose this one. We're going to pull the Werewolf out. Victory. And so had they had Spectrum in hand, they had that one hands down. But I like to think that between the Black Widow, the Rockslide, we were able to add enough disrupt that it stopped them from drawing that key resource. And we forced the retreat. We will gladly take the 1 cube where we can. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. Next up, we have Aloha. The first location is Camp Lehi. We end up getting a Rhino out of it, which is not a bad one to see. We have Rocket. I think I'm going to go ahead and play it. Most of the time, it doesn't end up triggering from this first play or first turn. Usually, you want to save him until you can play him when you absolutely know it's going to hit. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. They do play Snow Guard, and so we are able to get the scaling early on Rocket. We have a Beast to pull him back in here in just a moment. And we also have White Widow, which is going to clutter up this left lane a decent amount. We now have Werewolf in hand. That alongside a Beast and a Hawk to leverage is huge. And so if they play for Gamma Lab this turn, I think we use Rhino into Gamma Lab on the next turn. But it really depends on what we think they're going with. So we do have the Super Flow bonus. Kind of like Rockslide early, but I'm going to go ahead and use Rhino into something like Rockslide plus Beast. Or we can do Werewolf plus Beast to get a little bit of scaling going on the Werewolf instead. We're going to use Rhino. We're going to take away the Gamma Lab location. I don't want any Hulks floating around the board. I'd rather just play it heads up. We do have the Shang-Chi, which would be able to counter that lane, but I would like to save that for a different location if we can help it. And so we do have the Black Widow as well. I want to get Werewolf out, but I also know, well, if they have Loki, then something like the Widow's Bite wouldn't be as impactful. So let's go Werewolf now. Next turn, he's going to jump over to the left lane. We do have the ability to do White Widow plus Rocket. We'll start that scaling, and we can start the disrupt with like Rockslide and those sorts of cards. So the Quinjet comes down. The Nocturne comes down. Unfortunately, if they have Loki, they're going to be at a massive discount. And they'll be able to play a lot of cards out very easily. But with how many Widow's Kisses we have their way, it becomes a little bit trickier as well. So I actually kind of like this play. We have Nico here into White Widow here, which is going to take away their Super Flow bonus. And then White Widow is going to get destroyed. We have Rocket that we could use really wherever we needed to. Since they go first, I'm going to play Black Widow instead of the Rockslide. That's going to cap this at 11, and it makes sure that they don't draw a resource on this upcoming turn. And since we're using the White Widow and letting it get destroyed, I kind of think we go ahead and maybe we opt to still take away the Superflow anyways. Maybe we bounce him back over. We have Rocket here, which may scale, especially if they move their Nocturne over. It should scale. Wow. They played an awful lot of cards. So the Snow Guard comes down. The Bishop comes down. We probably should have snapped going into this. Then the Snow Guard Hawk comes down, so we weren't going to get any extra energy on this last turn anyways. Nocturne changes it. Luckily, it changes it into the Danger Room, but luckily the Snow Guard Hawk has disabled it, so we don't have to worry about that potential destroy or disruption. We get them completely capped out in the right lane. They can only play one final card on the final turn of the game. We have the Black Widow that is going to help us position our cards in the left. Rocket is going to scale in the right, and it's going to pull our Werewolf back in that direction. And so for this turn, we have one on reveal, we have one solid ongoing, and we can decide if we want the Werewolf to move or not. And so we will grab the one. We're not playing it super aggressively. Right now, we're just kind of testing how consistent the deck build can be. And between the lever of Werewolf or Hawk, it gets pretty consistent pretty quickly. We'll take the one cube. Let's go ahead and jump over into one more. Next up, we have KM Worst coming in at rank 28, which is huge. We have Nico, which is a beautiful resource with Muir Island on the board. We have White Widow, which we might end up using into Muir Island next turn. It just really depends on what they end up dropping. With the Quinjet, I assume that KM Worst is running Loki. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of the Loki builds, but they are definitely decently viable. So with Superflow, I think we end up going something like Black Widow instead. That adds that immediate disruption. They're going to have to play that Widow's Bite and choose where to start cluttering up the board. Next turn, we have the Rockslide to add even more disruption. Never mind. Black Widow is not going to trigger. It is going to turn into a demon, though, so we at least get a little bit of value there, I suppose. And then we'll go ahead and play our Rockslide into this last location. Central Park comes down, almost caps out this lane. If we could do the on reveal, we would do White Widow. Absolutely run with it. I'm going to go ahead and play Werewolf in the left lane. Next turn is where we'll do something like Rockslide. Maybe we do White Widow plus Falcon as a way to start enabling the Werewolf. I don't know for sure. It really depends. They do play a Nocturne in the left lane. They're going to have that flexibility, but we also have a decent amount of flexibility in our Werewolf. So I'm going to go double disrupt here. We're going to go Rockslide and Korg, make the Werewolf bounce a couple of times. Next turn, we have the Falcon that we are primed to drop, which would pull in our 1-cost cards. We'll get a cheap 1-cost, like 9-power demon to position wherever we want on the last turn of the game. That might end up being in Muir Island, might end up being somewhere else as well. So with our Werewolf, he's starting to scale relatively early. Their board is getting pretty cluttered pretty quickly, so a Loki is not as beneficial for them. So we could do Falcon to pull these back in. Or we could do White Widow plus Beast. This would allow us to scale Werewolf 2 more times. And then we pull in all of these cards. And so then we could start this lane with like a Beast to pull the Werewolf over. But we could also do White Widow plus Beast. And then we get a couple of on reveals to leverage. So if we do this, we won't draw on the last turn. And I think that's a potential problem. Oh well, we're going to do it anyways. And so the White Widow will cap them out in the Superflow, which is nice to see. Werewolf bounces over with Falcon. That's going to pull some cards in. He'll bounce back. We have a couple of on reveal triggers in the Nico, the Korg, and the Beast to leverage on this upcoming turn. And so Central Park comes down. They're actually completely capped out here because of their bear that they dropped. And so as long as we can overcome, I guess 6 power here, we can play anything we want in this lane. And we end up winning. So we do get the retreat. The Nico was going to end up potentially being 12 power. We could do the Nico here and then drop something else to double up on that 12 power play. I think we could have swung all 3 locations back in our favor, but we will take the win against the Loki player that looks like they didn't end up drawing Loki. We'll gladly take it where we can. A win is a win against Loki. And that is where we're going to get in the video for today. Overall, I had a fantastic run with this list. I think I went around 70% win rate in the limited testing that I had. It has a lot of counterplay. It has a lot of clutter. It has a lot of scalability. And so you have a lot of ways to find ways to win. Overall, I think the list is very solid. I also have an alternate build that uses a darkhawk, a shadow king, and a few things like that. If you guys would want to see it, let me know in the comment section down below. But we're going to go ahead and end the video here. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.